For assignment A, we decided to critique an online learning environment, and we decided to specifically look at a MOOC. And before going into depth of what our critique is about, we thought for our audience that it would be important to explain what a MOOC is. And a MOOC is a massive online open course. And what this means is that it's available and open to anyone on an online environment. So this could be through the internet, which is accessible through your computer only. And a MOOC only focuses on e-learning, which is through internet collaboration, through other peers, and the instructor of a course. And the ways that people gain access to a MOOC is that individuals sign up for free courses to gain knowledge about a specific topic of their choice. So this could be any kind of topic that they want. It could be poetry, it could be science. And these are things that can guide people through a question that they might have. So this focuses on the idea of inquiry-based learning, that you sign up for a course because you have been intrigued by a topic and you have questions about it. Then, once every participant has at least completed the MOOC, they would receive a certificate which would state that they would have completed it. And MOOCs have been very much so controversial within online education. And as we've learned so far in this class, online education steps away from the boundaries of traditional methods of teaching, especially within the classroom. There's been so much to say controversies that online learning is not as effective as face-to-face learning, which we are experiencing ourselves within our own program currently. And MOOCs can be categorized into X or C MOOCs, and those are two different formats that both MOOCs can use. And by looking at this diagram here on the right, it kind of focuses and breaks down the importance of a MOOC. So here you have course content. This is the beginning stage of what you read about. Then you have the classroom as one of many hubs, so it's split up into different breakout sections, which build more or less inclusivity. Then you have participants and instructors, talk amongst yourself. You have the time, you have the graduation or celebration, which you factored done, and then it's also the fact that MOOCs have hundreds of people also going with them. They're not so much succinct and concise like a classroom that we're used to, just having 30 people. A MOOC may have 100 people in them. So, to explain the differences between an XMOOC and a CMOOC. An XMOOC focuses on content transmission only. So in this case, it goes back to so much so that an XMOOC has a teacher-centered learning environment. In this case, that means the teacher has the authority, the knowledge, and the experiences, and the participants within this MOOC that's formatted this way do not have those essential skills. And what this comes down to is that they are the listeners. That means the teacher or the instructor is looked upon as the transmission of knowledge and also uses the unidirectional approach, which means that they are standing in the front, or in this case, they're sitting in front of the webcam with their webcam on only and with their mic on only, delivering the content, and participants are required to be taking down notes the whole time. And this is unfair because it suggests that there is little contribution to be made by participants to express their own understanding of what they're learning. And if you can't express your own understanding of what you're learning, how are you supposed to remain engaged and interested in the topics and subjects that you are taking in an online learning environment? And lastly, XMOOCs really stay away from peer assessment between participants because they believe that an XMOOC is very much so summative approached or formative assessments through tests and written assignments. They're very much so straightforward and restricted to what the teacher wants their participants to complete. And there's not much options, which is very sad. And if you think about it, as I mentioned earlier, participants aren't going to remain engaged and they can't set their own learning goals that they want to achieve. And without setting learning goals and without being given the opportunity to participate and express your own understanding and maybe have a great discussion amongst other students and participants, there is going to be very much so a distasteful taste and not a lot of interest within the subjects. Moving on, then there's the other form of CMOOCs. And CMOOCs are more important and have been expressed and understood as being far more beneficial than an XMOOC. A CMOOC places heavy emphasis on networking through a variety of different methods. So what that means is that you have your one base where you go to for your lessons, but then it spreads out across other different platforms that bring in interest of their participants. So it could be online discussion boards, it could be Twitter and Facebook, it could be maybe mind mappings or Padlets, all these kind of tech tools that we've been introduced that create inclusivity and also allow for participants to express their own knowledge and understanding. Also within CMOOCs, there's content contributions that are made by participants throughout the entirety of the course's period. And this is very significant because, as I mentioned within XMOOCs, there's no way for them to express their own knowledge. Here you have the students' voices, you have the participants' voices, which is far more important than just listening to the instructor the whole time. This encourages peer-to-peer learning and also collaborative skills, listening skills, and even group and teamwork skills, which are far more necessary within participants to develop and students now too. And also the instructors help develop a strong understanding. Basically, this comes down to is the instructor becomes the facilitator of knowledge, no longer the deliverer of knowledge. And the way that they act as a facilitator is that they pose higher order thinking questions, or maybe even they look at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Now, looking at this slide here, a MOOC here within this diagram explains what it very much so is. There's a whole lot of questions here, and these are questions that very much so a lot of outsiders have about MOOCs and that we have about MOOCs on the inside. There are open registrations, there's college credits, badges, role of the instructors. The learning community is very much so unknown from just a description, but we become more aware of the learning community once we're within it. It's free of charge, it can be affordable, it's very much so open content. And what is massive? There is no scale. There could be many students involved. And here on the left, this is what I really want to focus on the most, is that there's a focus on stability within XMOOCs. That means the instructor has the main authority. And within CMOOCs here, it's a focus on community and connections. It's the idea that students can make connections between each other, students can make connections with the instructor, and that it's entirely focused on the community as students as a whole and just not students individually. Within the whole, you have teaching strategies being evolved to make sure that every student will succeed and meet their own learning goals and will be able to develop a content understanding of what it should be taught.
So massive open courses are very popular today. Right here is an example of a very popular platform called Coursera. Now, Coursera was founded back in 2012, and what it is, it's essentially a platform that offers access to online courses by partnering with universities and organizations to deliver these courses to absolutely anyone who at least has an online internet connection. These courses vary, anything from business, computer science, health science, and even language. What we're going to look at today is a course, a MOOC, offered by Coursera called Modern American Poetry, English language course delivered by the University of Illinois. So with every MOOC in Coursera, you're going to get, of course, is the coursework. And here, it's all simply broken down in lessons and modules. So everything from the interactive books, pre-recorded video lectures, projects, homework assignments, and quizzes will all be found in the coursework. Of course, with the coursework, what you're going to get is access to discussion boards to have the ability to connect with many learners from all over the world. Now, your online learning community is going to be big, and you're going to have discussions, debates, perspectives from students really across the globe. And this is great for bringing in different ideas, even like helping answer questions that you might have. You might post something at a certain time, but essentially someone elsewhere is going to be on a computer somewhere in the world ready to help you out. Of course, at the end of it all, you have the ability to get a certificate. Now, you'd have to purchase the course in order to qualify for a certificate, but that certificate gives you recognition for completion. And that's really great because you can complete several courses in a specific area and get a specialization certificate that you can now show for when it comes to, let's say, employment or upgrading certain skills. So that's really great in Coursera. Going back, we can see the logistics of the course and the way it's broken down. Really, this course itself is broken down into 4 weeks. 4 weeks because it's a beginner's course, about 3 to 5 hours a week. Most courses are anywhere between 4 to 10 weeks, and you'll get everything from the syllabus to the coursework to the modules, the daily lectures that I talked about. Each module, each discussion, each assignment, each breakdown, whether it's graded or not, will all be available to you once you enroll in the course. Now, putting all this together, we'll go to the learning environment. And to have a good learning environment, it needs to be one that's very knowledge-centered, learner-centered, and assessment-centered, and community-centered, of course. Knowledge-centered, what we usually think about knowledge-centered is a very teacher-driven, content-driven resources. And in this particular course, Modern American Poetry, is very driven by teachers who specialize in the field of poetry. So it's not the perspectives of just one teacher, but multiple teachers, from one to several teachers here that can give points of view and different points of view on certain types of poetry. So that's really good. Very good knowledge-centered learning right there. What's also great is that what this course provides is beyond just lectures. It's saying that it provides vivid images of events, people, places, so you can tie the poems and meanings behind the poems in something much greater. You also get a very good learner-centered community. In MOOCs, like I mentioned, a lot of people from all over the world with different perspectives and points of view are sharing their interests, their attitudes, their beliefs in the discussion boards, in the assignments, the ability to connect with teachers. Very learner-centered. Assessment-centered, feedback is always given. It's online, feedback is very quick. Formative feedback, throughout the course. You'll have summative feedback at the end of the course. And again, it's very community-based. Being part of a community, of a global community, all around, essentially, is the idea behind a MOOC. And it's a really good way of moving forward, and it's a very big part of education today.
Now, the course does have some benefits to it, and it does help the learners out using some of the different principles found in the Clark and Meyer article of e-learning principles. One of the first ones that we talked about was the personalization principle, in the fact that they're using conversational. The lecturers are using conversational language instead of formal languages, and they often find that conversational languages benefit the learner greatly over the formal learning, because they're sort of in their own words, which I think helps a little more than compared to formal text. Another one that the MOOC does is that the redundancy principle is not violated in the fact that the videos that will be presented are just have graphics or sounds, or quick quotes or graphics instead of just long texts, and they accompany these graphics and videos with narration, which helps the learner instead of reading out long paragraphs. And lastly, the modality principle is used by not having long slides, but instead having the faculty members narrate the videos while they're being shown. And they also use the combination of both the readings from the poets as well, which again are very short. Another thing that helps with particular learners who want to get ahead, all the material is provided in advance from the very beginning of the class, so they're able to go ahead and look at the material prior to the class, form an understanding on it, form an opinion on it, and then once they do come to class, the professor or the faculty member can then reaffirm their knowledge on it or understanding, and ultimately provide a better comprehension for the student. Now, some constraints the MOOC, particular one that we found, does have is that it does violate the coherence principle in the sense that it's going to be a similar teaching style throughout the course. And we think that may cause some learners to lose interest after a while, seeing the same thing over and over and over again, unless you're actually comfortable with this learning style, you may be tuned out very quickly.
So as you can see, this slide deals with some of the improvements that we feel would be important to the MOOC. Mostly what we've looked at here are to do with assessment. We felt that quizzes would be an important addition to the MOOC, in that it would benefit both participants as well as instructors. Now, for the participants, it would help them to assess their learning, to see how well they're doing in the program. As far as instructors are concerned, this would help them to assess how they're delivering the content and how well the students are receiving the content that's been delivered. Reflective journals would also be a good addition, we feel, to the MOOC. Reflective journals are particularly important in that they would be able to help students or participants look back and see where they've started, what their knowledge base was, and how they've improved over the period of or the duration of the course. We also feel that mind maps would also be a good addition to the MOOC, in that mind maps are very important, in that they help the students to be able to visually plot or compare their progress over the course of the lesson. Uh, so these are some of the things that we've looked at. Now, we also felt that if an hour of instruction would be incorporated into the MOOC, that would help the students greatly. It would provide a kind of forum for students to be able to meet on a social level and be able to ask questions and answer and get answers to these questions. So overall, we feel that these are things that would help to improve the MOOC if they're incorporated into the entire process.
It could be used in a variety of different contexts for learning outside of a classroom setting. This could be done through the use of an inquiry-based learning approach. For example, if a student has a particular interest in American poetry, such as the MOOC described in this class here today, they would begin to ask questions about the topic. They're curious about the topic and want to learn more about it. After building these questions, they go into the MOOC and investigate the topic. And after they've acquired new knowledge on the topic, they are finally able to create and discuss information about American poetry. They would discuss this with their peers and teach their peers about what they've learned. Finally, students would reflect on their learning and look at where they've come from and where they are now. This MOOC could be used in the classroom to extend student learning in that subject area. It could be used as an independent inquiry project in any classroom you like. For example, if you're in a science class and your students are learning chemistry, electricity, ecosystems, or planetary science, you'd be able to have your students complete a MOOC based on something that they find interesting. In electricity, for example, if they're particularly interested in lightning, the student could go in and complete a MOOC on lightning to learn more about that topic. The student could then come back to their classroom and discuss and create information based on that knowledge, and finally reflect on their topic. Thanks for listening, and here is a list of our references used here in this assignment.